business, which is open for international and domestic student internship. Undip has various supporting facilities to provide excellent services in education as well as research. International collaboration with hundreds of overseas top-ranked universities has established to support internationalization in research, academic, and community services programs.
Undip.
Baik, terima kasih banyak. Sebelumnya maaf, apakah suara saya sudah terdengar?
Jelas, Mbak. Bagus sekali suaranya.
Baik, terima kasih banyak Pak Budi. Selamat pagi Bu Rozaini.
Selamat pagi semua.
Pagi,
Selamat pagi Bu Rozaini. Ya, good morning.
Morning.
Selamat pagi Pak Budi.
Pagi Mbak, pagi.
Selamat pagi Bu Yus.
Selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi Bu Sulis.
Selamat pagi juga.
Nah, selamat pagi Pak Mursid.
Assalamualaikum, selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi Bu Diar. Baik, mungkin kita ke...
Selamat pagi.
Oke, Bu Diar. Selamat pagi Bu Niki.
Pagi.
Pagi. Baik, izin untuk memulai nggih Bapak Ibu.
Ya, silakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Yang kami hormati narasumber kita pada pagi hari ini, Ibu Rozaini binti Abdullah, PhD dari Universiti Putra, Malaysia. Selamat pagi, Ibu.
Ya, selamat pagi.
Yang kami hormati Dekan FKM Undip Bapak Dr. Budiono. Yang kami hormati Wakil Dekan 1 FKM Undip Bapak Dr. Nurzayuli SKM MKes. Yang kami hormati Wakil Dekan 2 FKM Undip Ibu Dr. Apoina Kartini MKes. Yang kami hormati Ketua Bagian Kesehatan Lingkungan Ibu Dr. Yusniar Hanani Darunjati STP MKes. Yang kami hormati dosen bagian kesehatan lingkungan, program studi sarjana kesehatan masyarakat, juga seluruh dosen dan sivitas akademika FKM Undip, serta yang kami hormati pula Bapak Ibu serta peserta seminar pendidikan kesehatan lingkungan yang pagi hari ini berbahagia. Selamat datang kami ucapkan dalam kegiatan Seminar Pendidikan Kesehatan, Bagian Magister Kesehatan Lingkungan, Prodi Sarjana Kesehatan Masyarakat FKM Undip, mempersembahkan kegiatan ini yang bertemakan Toxicology as a Basic Principle in Health Risk Assessment. Puji syukur kehadirat Tuhan Yang Maha Esa yang telah melimpahkan rahmat, taufik dan hidayahnya, sehingga kita semua dapat berkumpul dalam keadaan sehat meskipun dalam ruang virtual. Dengan mengucap Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, kegiatan pada pagi hari ini dimulai. Bapak Ibu yang kami hormati, Untuk mengawali kegiatan pada pagi hari ini, alangkah baiknya kita berdoa menurut agama dan keyakinan masing-masing. Berdoa, kami persilahkan. Berdoa selesai. Selanjutnya, kami persilahkan Bapak dan Ibu serta seluruh peserta untuk mendengarkan lagu Indonesia Raya dengan sikap sempurna. Kepada operator dipersilahkan. Mungkin untuk panitia yang bertugas bisa menampilkan lagu Indonesia Raya.
Indonesia tanah air, aku berdiri jadi pandu ibumu. Indonesia kebangsaanku, bangsa dan tanah airku. Marilah kita bersatu, Indonesia bersatu. Hiduplah tanahku, hiduplah negeriku, bangsaku, rakyatku semuanya. Bangunlah jiwanya, bangunlah badannya untuk Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, tanahku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, tanahku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya.
Baik, selanjutnya kita akan menyimak pemaparan, pengantar, dan laporan kegiatan yang akan disampaikan oleh Ibu Dr. Yusniar Hanani Darundiati, STPMKes. Kepada beliau, kami persilahkan.
Terima kasih. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Selamat pagi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
The Honorable our Dean, Dr. Budiono, our Vice Dean, Dr. Nurja Juli, my colleagues and also my students, and our dear Honorable guest lecturer today, Dr. Rozaini. How are you?
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, finally we meet again.
Yeah, we meet again virtually this
Yeah.
time.
After about 2 months, yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, I would like to express my grateful to Allah for giving us our blessing and health so we could participate in this visiting lecture program. And also our salawat to our Prophet Nabi Muhammad SAW. Hopefully we can follow his path consistently. This visiting lecture is our regular program. We conduct this program every year, about maybe 3 or until 4 times a year. So this is the second series from our visiting lecture. We have 2 more topics that you could participate in these 2 weeks and then our student really appreciate that Dr. Rozaini could share your knowledge, and maybe could enrich our understanding about toxicology as a basic in risk assessment. And hopefully we could continuing our relationship in our next program, and maybe exchange students or maybe research and so on. That's all maybe from me, and thank you very much. Sorry for many mistakes I have made. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
Waalaikumsalam
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih kami ucapkan kepada Ibu Dr. Yusniar Hanani Darundiati STPMKes. Bapak, Ibu, dan seluruh peserta, kita akan menyimak sambutan dari Dekan Fakultas Kesehatan Masyarakat Universitas Diponegoro, dan sekaligus kami mohon berkenan untuk dapat membuka kegiatan seminar pendidikan kesehatan lingkungan ini secara resmi. Kepada yang kami hormati, Bapak Dr. Budiono SKM MKes, kami persilahkan.
Terima kasih. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh.
Dear Vice Dean for the Academic and Student Affairs, Dr. Rozaini, and also Vice Dean for Resources, Dr. Abdullah Kartini, and my colleagues, lecturers, students, and participants, especially on the committee to conduct this event. And also I respect the speaker, Rozaini binti Abdullah, PhD. Good morning, Rozaini.
Morning, Pak Budi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
From Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences, Universiti Putra, Malaysia. Yeah. And of course, all participants in virtual meeting this day. And moderator, Dr. Sulistiani, thank you very much. This event initiated by Dr. Yusniar Hanani Darundiati and the team, of course. First of all, let us say praise to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, who gives thousands of efforts to us until this day. This program involves students of Faculty of Public Health, Universitas Diponegoro, lecturers, especially in the Department of Environmental Health, Faculty of Public Health. And Universitas Diponegoro has a program called Visiting Professor, and also other international programs, for example, a guest lecture, also summer course, international conference, and student and also staff exchange. For world-class university achievement. This program is conducted routinely and will continue, I think, to next year. With online or offline methods. I think it's perfect for sharing knowledge and experience, especially in toxicology and health risk assessment. And maybe we have a potential for collaboration or networking and in field of the education and also research and also maybe in publication. this aim of the seminar to elevate knowledge and experience of the student, especially, and also for lecturers and participants in toxicology and health assessment. We know that the toxicology is the study of the adverse effect of chemicals on living organisms. I think it's the cornerstone of all aspects of chemical safety. Knowledge of the subject is needed in various fields, from the chemical industry to medicine, I think, and also emergency services, forensic, and particularly for the regulatory science. Toxicology involves the study of symptoms and also mechanism, treatment, and detection of poisoning, especially the poisoning of people or humans. We realize that so many chemicals surround us, both synthetic and natural chemicals, and which are the safer chemical. Understanding toxicology included I think we have to study about the cell injury, mode of action, also mechanism of action of the chemical, adverse effect, acute and chronic exposure, dose response, loyal and also loyal, and of course toxicokinetic and the adverse effect. Besides toxicology, and the epidemiological studies are also the science that contributes to health risk assessment. So we have to understand about the two studies, and then we also understand the step of the health risk assessment. So I'm sure that Rozaini binti Abdullah PhD is an expert in toxicology and health risk assessment, and she will explain them briefly. Hopefully, Rozaini binti Abdullah PhD, thank you very much. Our colleague, lecturer, student, and also participant will enjoy in this seminar, and I hope it will be an active discussion. With your permission, and of course, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, this event I obviously open. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh. Terima kasih banyak kepada Bapak Dr. Budiono SKM MKes. Dengan demikian telah resmi dibuka kegiatan kita pada pagi hari ini. Bapak, Ibu, serta seluruh peserta, izin untuk mengingatkan supaya mengaktifkan kamera dan dapat menggunakan virtual background yang nantinya akan dikirim lewat room chat. Untuk presensi kehadiran akan kami share melalui chat Zoom pada saat sesi akhir pemaparan materi. Pengisian daftar hadir ini sebagai syarat untuk penerbitan sertifikat. Sertifikat dan materi akan kami infokan melalui email. Bapak, Ibu, serta seluruh peserta, selagi masih pagi dan masih fresh, alangkah baiknya jika kita dapat berfoto di ruang virtual ini terlebih dahulu. Kami mohon untuk seluruh peserta dan hadirin dapat menyalakan kamera, dan mungkin bisa saya bantu untuk mendokumentasikan, untuk memimpin dokumentasi. Baik. Mungkin yang masih ingin on cam dan ikut dokumentasi masih ditunggu sebentar. Baik, mungkin bisa kami mulai dokumentasi. Dokumentasi terdiri dari 2 foto nih Bapak Ibu serta seluruh peserta. Untuk foto yang pertama mungkin bisa gaya formal terlebih dahulu. Buat panitia yang bertugas dipersiapkan nggih. Baik, saya izin untuk menghitung. 1, 2, 3. Mungkin gaya bebas, gaya yang menunjukkan ciri khas masing-masing. Dipersilahkan. Oke, boleh. 1, 2, 3. Baik, di slide kedua masih ada nggih mungkin gaya formal terlebih dahulu untuk slide 2. Mungkin bisa gaya semuanya karena kita nggak tahu nggih mana yang kita di slide 1 atau di slide 2. Bisa saya bantu hitung formal terlebih dahulu. 1, 2, 3. Mungkin bisa dilanjutkan gaya bebas. 1, 2, 3. Baik. Baik. Baik Bapak Ibu dan seluruh peserta, kita akan memasuki sesi yang ditunggu-tunggu. Sesi ini selanjutnya akan dipandu oleh moderator yang bertindak sebagai moderator pada kesempatan pagi hari ini, yaitu beliau Ibu Dr. Randa Sulistiani MKes. Beliau merupakan dosen bagian kesehatan lingkungan Fakultas Kesehatan Masyarakat Universitas Diponegoro. Beliau juga expert di bidang kesehatan lingkungan serta terlibat dalam banyak kegiatan pengembangan ilmu, penelitian, pengabdian kepada masyarakat, dan publikasi di bidang kesehatan lingkungan. Mari kita sambut bersama-sama Ibu Dr. Randa Sulistiani MKes. Kami persilahkan.
Ya, terima kasih. Mau MC mahasiswa kita ini, Lina Nur Khalifah. Ya, pagi hari ini kita akan mengikuti visiting lecturer. Good morning, Ibu Rozaini.
Morning.
Selamat datang di acara kami, Visiting Lecturer Toxicology as a Basic Principle in Health Risk Assessment. Sebelumnya, mohon izin saya untuk memandu acara ini dengan menggunakan bahasa Indonesia. Ya. Pagi hari ini, saya lihat sudah ada sekitar 150 orang yang ikut dalam kegiatan visiting lecturer. Kemudian sebelum masuki acara materi dari Ibu Rozaini, izinkan saya untuk membacakan CV dari Ibu Rozaini. Ya, Ibu Rozaini PhD, lengkapnya adalah Ibu Rozaini binti Abdullah PhD ERT. Beliau adalah Presiden of Malaysian Society of Toxicology and Department of Environmental and Occupational Health, Faculty of Medicine and Health Science, Universiti Putra, Malaysia. Saat ini alamat beliau adalah di kantor di Faculty of Medicine and Health Science, Universiti Putra, Malaysia, Department of Environmental Health and Occupational Health. Dan sejak tahun 2018 hingga sekarang, beliau bergelar ERT, European Registered Toxicologist, ya, dan telah mengikuti pendidikan dari S1 di Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia, begitu pula S2 di Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia, dengan background adalah environmental health dan kemudian health of science. Untuk gelar S3 didapatkan di Wageningen University the Netherlands di bidang toksikologi. Beliau sangat ekspor di bidang toksikologi. Terakhir tahun 2021 beliau menjadi pembicara pada Congress of Toxicology in Developing Countries, virtually from Malaysian for Women in Toxicology session. Kemudian beliau dari 2017 sampai sekarang itu sebagai Senior Lecturer at Department of Environmental and Occupational Health, Universiti Putra, Malaysia. Coordinator for Industrial and Environmental Toxicology, and Environmental and Occupational Health Toxicology, and Biostatistic for Environment and Occupational Health courses. In addition, involved in co-teaching the Chemical Health Risk Assessment, Health Impact Assessment, and Laboratory Methods in Human Nutrition Research course. Banyak lagi pengalaman beliau sebagai pembicara tahun 2017, ya, speaker at Malaysian Congress of Toxicology for Experimental Toxicology session. Jadi sejak tahun 2009 sampai Januari 2010 beliau bekerja sebagai research assistant in Biocompatibility and Toxicology Laboratory in UKM Kuala Lumpur. Kemudian sejak 2014 sampai 2017 beliau mengajar for practical course Food Toxicology for Master in Food Science Safety and Cell Biology and Health for Bachelor in Biology at Wageningen University, the Netherlands. Kemudian berafiliasi dengan berbagai institusi, yaitu dia sebagai Interim Associate Researchers at Natural Medicine and Product Research Laboratory Institute of Bioscience UPM sejak tahun 2021 hingga sekarang. Selain itu, sejak tahun 2021 hingga sekarang, beliau juga berafiliasi dengan Malaysian Society of Toxicology sebagai presiden. Kemudian juga Task Force Member Study on Strengthening the Environmental Governance in Malaysia under Academy of Science Malaysia. Dan banyak lagi aktivitas beliau lainnya dengan affiliation yang lain. Kemudian beliau juga menerima research grant dari 2021 hingga 2023 dari Putra Research Grant EPM by Universiti Putra Malaysia untuk melakukan penelitian risk assessment of pyrrolizidine alkaloids from Malaysian traditional medicine and herbal supplement. Kemudian juga beliau mendapatkan Fundamental Research Grant Scheme pada tahun 2019 hingga tahun ini dari Minister of Education Malaysia to conduct study on development of an integrated strategy using in vitro in silico method for risk assessment of natural foodborne genotoxic and carcinogen. Kemudian beliau juga melakukan fellowship to attend the international training course on occupational and environmental health and the regional meeting on children's environmental health by Chulaborn Research Institute, Thailand. Begitu pula dengan fellowship to attend the international training course on environmental toxicology granted by Chulaborn Research Institute, Thailand. Kemudian untuk pengalaman beliau membimbing mahasiswa mulai dari mahasiswa sejak tahun 2013 untuk MSc program di bidang food safety, food toxicology and safety assessment of plant food supplement containing aristologic acid in rats. Kemudian juga untuk PhD. Untuk PhD ini ada dari beberapa, cukup banyak juga ini, antara lain level of genotoxic and carcinogenic compounds in traditional medicine and herbal supplement in Malaysia and its associate risk assessment. Dari 2019 hingga saat ini masih berlangsung untuk pembimbingan PhD program. Ya. Publikasi yang dilakukan juga cukup banyak. Banyak sekali mungkin ya, bukan cukup banyak. Banyak sekali Ibu ini tergabung dengan beberapa rekannya untuk penulisan genotoxic and carcinogenic compounds present in Malaysian traditional medicine and herbal supplement. A review based on the Malaysian Herbal Monograph. Diterbitkan pada Malaysian Journal Medicine Health Science. Kemudian beliau bersama dengan rekannya juga memiliki publikasi tentang Safety Assessment of Natural Product in Malaysian, Current Practice, Challenge, and New Strategy. Dan ada beberapa yang lain yang sebagai main authornya, yaitu Country Report on Children's Environmental Health, Reviews on Environmental Health, kemudian juga Defining in vivo dose response curves for kidney DNA duct formation of aristologic acid 1 ya, in rat, mouse, and human by an in vitro and physiology based kinetic modeling approach ya, pada Jurnal Applied Toxicology. Kemudian juga pada tahun 2020 Country Report on Children Environmental Health, Reviews on Environmental Health, kemudian juga beberapa yang lain bergabung bersama rekan-rekannya. Ya, banyak sekali, tidak bisa saya bacakan satu persatu. Ini dari artikel jurnal sampai dengan proceeding, beliau aktif sekali menulis ya. Kemudian untuk training-training yang diikuti juga cukup banyak sekali sejak tahun 2014 ya, mulai dari di Belanda hingga tahun 2020 yang dilaksanakan oleh WHO, beliau ikuti, yaitu Evolving International of Methodologies and Tools for Chemical Risk Assessment. Ya, demikian CV dari Ibu Rozaini binti Abdullah PhD ERTS. Untuk itu, saatnya sekarang Ibu Rozaini kami persilahkan untuk memberikan materi terkait dengan toxicology as a basic principle in health risk assessment. Layar dan waktu kami persilahkan.
Terima kasih Ibu Sulistiani. Ya,
Ya,
benar.
betul.
Okay. Saya sekarang akan share my slide.
Rozaini, can I ask you something?
Yeah, sure.
Rozaini, when you conduct or participate for training in Julapun Research Institute.
When?
Yeah, when did you?
It's actually before pandemic, so I think 2020, and they are going to also have another training end of this year. I think in but different topic.
Okay.
And usually because the society, Malaysian Society of Toxicology, have link with this institute because we are under one umbrella with International Union of Toxicology and also WHO. Because I believe that some of your lecturers also already our members, and they should also receive the email regarding the invitation to attend the training.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ibu Yusnia, have you received the email?
Yeah.
On the So if you are interested to join the training, because they have limited number.
Yeah, it's very. I think it's very excellent training because I at 2012 also get the training at Julapun Research Institute. Yes, with the colleague from UKM.
Yeah, because last time in 2020, actually I attended like 2 courses, and then another one is actually I was invited to talk on children environmental health, and there was one participant, Universitas UI, Indonesia. Yeah. So I think that's very interesting, especially on the networking part. So if you're interested, please join. Please try to apply for that fellowship, and perhaps we also will have someone from Malaysia to attend the training.
Thank you very much, Rozaini.
No problem.
And I cannot accompany you until finish
Sure,
due
sure,
to due to our next agenda to
sure.
webinar. Thank you very much for joining this event, and hopefully you enjoy this
Yeah.
webinar and success for you and of all the participants and also committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pak Budi.
Okay.
Alright. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me to give my knowledge, a bit of my knowledge on toxicology, especially in health risk assessment. Okay, as it has been mentioned by Ibu Sulistiani regarding all my CV, I think she read all the CVs on the website. But basically, I'm just a normal human being being trained in toxicology because my first degree is environmental health, kesihatan lingkungan, and I have developed a specific interest in this subject. During my first final year project, during my bachelor degree project, the S1 project, I did my research in toxicology. So that is actually one of the starting point where I specifically, study in this field, because I think this field it's important, and this is fundamental in any subject, not only in kesihatan lingkungan, and also is a basic concept that we can use in our daily life. And I believe that all students and also participants today have a basic knowledge in toxicology. And if you don't understand in any part of my lecture, please let me know. All right, so that or maybe perhaps you don't really catch my words. Saya juga mohon izin untuk bercakap dalam bahasa Inggeris, because if I speak in bahasa, I will take not 1 hour, perhaps 2 or 3 hours. The basic in health risk assessment. Okay. So with that, I think in the next 1 hour or maybe less than 1 hour, I will share a bit on the basic principle of toxicology in health risk assessment. But before we go into my lecture, I would like to ask one simple question. I know that it's Saturday and morning Saturday. Supposedly we can have a long sleep today, but maybe you can just go to this QR code, or you can go to slido.com and put these numbers and just write down one word to describe how do you feel today? How do you feel now? How are you feeling today? Just screen this QR code and then just write down one word to describe your feeling. I can see 2 participants typing. Come on, we have like more than 100 participants now. You can just try. I will not, I don't know who are you. So just write down. How do you feel now? Happy, great, good. What else? Because usually when I throw this question to my students, they feel like, I feel tired, I feel boring, I feel sleepy, because this is, I can see one sleepy. This is Saturday. I truly understand. The biggest cloud, we have good, tired, and great. What else? Someone feel excited? Well, not someone, more than one feel excited. Amazing, so happy, you feel May. Okay, May. Enthusiastic, hungry, please grab something while listening to my lecture, please. All right. Yeah, nice meeting you too. This time, perhaps next time we can have a physical meeting. Yeah. You feel nice. Okay, incredible. Interesting. Okay. So we can see that great, good, and excited are the biggest cloud regarding how you feel today. And the next question will be, can you please describe
one word. When you listen, when you heard about toxicology, what do you understand about toxicology? Only one word. Oh, very excited. Complex, toxic. What else? Bad. Okay, now the biggest cloud is poison, toxic, dangerous. Interesting. What else? Study about toxic and poison. It's complicated, huh? But if you understand the basic concept of toxicology, it's really interesting because we are in the field of environmental health, environmental and occupational health. We know that with this knowledge, we can apply to protect our environment and also our workers and also our public. All right. All right. So basically, everyone that posed the answer in this cloud, in this Slido, understand a concept of toxicology. So when we talk about toxicology, this is an overview of my lecture today. I'm going to break into 4 different parts, which is I will explain about basic principle of toxicology and type of hazards risk assessment process. And I will give you one example on my project on how we do the toxicological risk assessment. Okay, this is basic where when we study toxicology is about toxic adverse effect of chemical on living organism. It's important for the safe use of chemical, including drugs, additive, novel food, and also many things. So anyone remember who is this guy? I don't want Ibu Yusnia to answer. How about students? How do you know about this guy? How about student? Anyone knows about this guy? It's Paracelsus. Paracelsus, okay. He's a father of toxicology when he mentioned about notion of dose. Okay, this is the basic principle that we are going to use this in life. Okay, we know that everything is toxic and the dose make it poison. So you need to understand this concept first before you can undergo or you can apply this knowledge in risk assessment, for instance. All right. So our aim in modern toxicology is to define the toxicity and mode of action based on the and also if they have the structure activity relationship. And based on after we define toxicity, we can evaluate the health and also environmental hazard and risk. And with this evaluation, we can advise. We can advise tasks for authorities, industries, and consumers. So these are the major aims in toxicology. And I believe that at this stage, everyone should understand the difference between hazard and risk. So for instance, in this notes, okay, in this slide, how dangerous is asbestos? So before that, do you know that where can we find asbestos? Anyone? Or perhaps you can just also write down in the chat box. If you don't want to speak up, you can write down where can we find asbestos? Anyone? Oh, sorry. Ya, bisa bahasa Indonesia. Alright. So di mana agaknya kita jumpa asbestos? Because I think this is one of the common environmental contaminant. Okay, banyak terutama pada building, the old building, pada bahagian atap, bumbungnya. Okay, this is the size of asbestos, and one of the most abundant type of asbestos is, for example, chrysotile. And how can we expose via inhalation, and it can deposit in our lung. And when it is deposited in our lung, and there are many things that can happen in lung, And for instance, it will interact with other cells. It can increase the release of cytokines, mediators, production of reactive oxygen species, and finally it will lead to a disease. For instance, it can cause the fibrosis, the cancer, and also mesothelioma. So the question is, we have, for instance, asbestos behind the carpet. Is it a hazard or risk? Hazard or risk? Usually in my class, I always have a love to pick up names of my students so that they can still, focus on my class. Anyone, is it a hazard or risk?
Ayo, jangan malu-malu.
Ya, jangan malu-malu, jangan segan-segan. Salah, tiada yang betul. I will not punish for the wrong if you have a wrong answer. Okay, this is also to improve your understanding about hazard and risk. Anyone would like to try? Is it a hazard or risk?
Hazard, Novita.
Very good, Navita. So it's a hazard, all right? When it becomes risk, when we want to remove the asbestos from carpet. All right, so meaning that when we talk about risk, there is exposure, all right? Because it being released to the air, and we need to wear a specific PPE, personal protective equipment. All right, so the difference between hazard and risk is it's important because you are going to use this knowledge in health risk assessment. So you can look at this picture and you know that risk is equal to hazard time exposure, or we can also say that in toxicology is risk is equals to toxicity time exposure, or you can say it's right. Then you need to know what is actually the toxicity of chemical and the exposure of the chemical to human or to environment. All right. So I won't go into this detail because I believe that all of you understand the basic, what is actually the risk and hazard. And if you don't understand, or if you still have a problem to understand the difference between risk and hazard, you can go to this link to get more information on the risk and hazard. So the fundamental rule is exposure must first occur for a chemical to present risk, and the magnitude of the risk is proportionate to a potency and how long is the exposure. So how potent is the chemical and how long have you been exposed to a chemical? So for example, you have one chemical, one causing liver toxicity, another chemical cause cell toxicity. So you know that they have different potency, and you need to know how much people are exposed to this type of chemical before you can define the risk. Okay, so in this lecture, we will go through this process. Okay, this is the risk evaluation by FAO, Federation of Agriculture Organization, and also WHO, World Health Organization. When we talk about risk assessment, it's always about the hazard identification, hazard characterization, exposure assessment, and risk characterization, 4 steps. And this is what we call risk assessment. And after you characterize the risk, we need to manage the risk. And also all of this need to be communicated by risk communication. But in this lecture, I will not talk about the risk management and risk communication because I think for this topic, this is a huge thing. So I will only touch upon the risk assessment process and focusing on the toxicology principle. And we also have the risk analysis where we need to communicate risk, to manage the risk and risk assess to do the risk assessment, and this is what we call the risk analysis. So before we go to risk assessment, toxicological risk assessment, you need to know that there are 2 types of compound that will have different type of on how you conduct the risk assessment. So one One character is chemical, which is a non-genotoxic compounds, and another one is genotoxic compound, and the risk assessment of this group is different. So before you can conduct the risk assessment, you need to understand your compound or your chemical. Is it will cause a non-genotoxic mode of action, or it cause the genotoxic mode of action? So for instance, if you have one chemical that interact with your DNA, it cause mutation, or it will have adverse effects to your genetic material, all right, DNA, the DNA, then we call that compound under, it will fall under genotoxic compound. Or one chemical can cause cancer without this mode of action. For instance, it causes a problem, it will trigger the hormone, a certain hormone in the body, and then finally lead to cancer. So this is what we call the non-genotoxic compounds. So remember that if you have these two, you need to categorize a chemical, either it causes the genotoxic or non-genotoxic chemicals. So for toxicological hazard, we can define using qualitative or quantitative methods. When we talk about qualitative, you can talk about the symptoms. You saw that one public or in one community have this kind of symptoms, and then for instance, they have a choking or difficult to breathe. So this is symptoms. So you can define the hazard based on the symptoms and also the mode of action, or you can also define the hazard based on the dose response curve or dose response effect relationship, or you can also say about, you can also quantify based on the time dose response relationship. So for qualitative, there are many effects of chemical that you can go through. So these are some of the examples that generally this kind of effect can be generated by animal testing, because in toxicology, we always do testing in animal to see either the newly synthesized chemical cause problem in the nervous system, for instance, or it caused the liver toxicity. So you need to, we need to, understand based on animal testing. Or we can also define based on the mode of action. It can be from in vitro, from the cell study, and also from animal study. For instance, if you exposed to hydrogen cyanide, so it will inhibit specific enzyme, for instance, the cytochrome oxidase, or if you're exposed to pesticide, OPs, or organophosphate chemical, it will inhibit enzyme called acetylcholinesterase. So when, for example, you go to a community and you take the blood and you see the level of acetylcholinesterase enzyme, is it increased or is it decreased the level, then you know that either they have been exposed to a specific type of chemical. So you can quantify, this is an indicator to know that the exposure to a certain chemical, or you can also have a specific reaction where some chemical can bind to DNA and cannot be repaired. So you can also see from this. And if you have competition with hormone, vitamins, and also you can find the metabolites of certain chemical when you expose, and then it excreted via urine, for example, so then you measure the urine metabolites. And when we talk about quantitative, so remember it's about the dose-related phenomena, or in other words, the dose make a chemical toxic. And then when you go deeper in toxicology, then you know that the next is not only about dose, it's also about the mechanism of toxicity, because you know that one chemical can have different way of how they behave in human body, and maybe they have different behavior when they go to the environment. So as toxicologists, we need to understand, we need to know the level of exposure, and we need to know how does one chemical, the mechanism of chemical in the body or in the environment. So for quantitative, it is important to define either it is acute or chronic exposure. So when we talk about acute, so meaning that it is a single exposure, but very high dose, relatively high dose or high concentration. But when we talk about chronic exposure, Usually it's a lifetime exposure, it's long, more than 3 months at least. And usually it's usually exposed at a lower dose. So you need to define either it is acute or chronic exposure. So now let's go to the first step in risk assessment, which is the hazard identification. So if you have any question, you can just stop me at any time. So it's not only me talking, so at least we can have an interaction between the audience. All right, first step is hazard identification. How to identify hazard? Epidemiology data, like what your dean mentioned before. So it's in kesihatan lingkungan, in environmental health, the fundamental topics or fundamental field that everyone should master is one is toxicology, of course. Another subject is epidemiology. So based on this epidemiology data, we can know that we can identify, is it the people or community has been exposed to a certain chemical or not. Or we can have data based on the animal data, experimental animal data, or from the cell data, or if they have a similar structure. Okay, in toxicology, chemistry is important. All right, so let's say if you have been exposed to one chemical, so I always use this chemical. Easy to explain, I think. Anyone knows what is this chemical, the structure like this? Agak-agaknya ini adalah struktur kimia apa ya? Oh, like this. Pelajar-pelajar postgraduate perhaps? Benzene, thank you so much, Angga Dwi Cahya. This is benzene, all right? We have been exposed to benzene from environment. For instance, if you use, but I think nowadays we have reduced the level of benzene in fuel, for instance. So if you have something like this, benzene in the environment, but when we want to develop a new chemical, for instance, you have like another chemicals here or here. So we can use it in toxicology. We can actually predict what happened to a chemical if they have a same structure, and then we can make a prediction. And this is actually an alert structure. As a toxicologist, if you saw this kind of structure, which we call epoxide, I hope that pernah dengar this chemical. This is one of the alert structure in toxicology. Then we know that if their metabolism cause these metabolites, and we know that this structure or this chemical might have a potential to cause harmful effects to human body, because this structure is very it loves to attack DNA, and it will bind to the DNA and then cause the adverse effects. So this is what we call the structure similarities. And then we can also have the data from the critical effects, target organs, and you can also identify the hazard based on the globally harmonized system, or you can look at the level of chemical. Is it cause carcinogen? Is it cause effects to the environment, for instance? So we can also identify from molecular to cellular to target organs. For instance, if you have been exposed to chemical, is it this chemical can affect the enzyme or receptor in the body? Or you can see the process, either it will be the chemical has interrupt or disturb the process, and finally it causes the target organ toxicity. Usually when we talk about this, you talk about the most sensitive organ. Okay, so one chemical can cause many toxicity, so you need to define where does this chemical will deposit, all right, when we have been exposed, and then where this chemical will stay longer. It will go to the brain, or it will go to our liver, or it go to the kidney. So you need to know the chemical where the target organ, so that when you do evaluation, you take the right sample at the right target organ. Okay, for the testing, so these are some of the testing that you can use to identify hazard. Or I won't go into detail for this part. And usually for this animal testing is actually to obtain the dose response curve that will be used in the next method, which is the hazard characterization. So we can also use the in vitro testing, the cell study, and we don't have many in vitro testing for the risk assessment, the validated test. So only we have this 3 that is being validated to be used in the hazard identification. So before we go to hazard characterization, I will explain a bit on the exposure assessment before we go to the dose response curve. So exposure assessment, so there are 2 types, 2 things that is important. You need to understand the route or the route of exposure and the site of exposure and how long have you been exposed to the chemical. So the route of exposure, so oral, either you ingest directly from food, for example. Okay, this is what we call the GI tract or oral exposure. You can be exposed also to chemical via inhalation through lung. And then you can have the dermal exposure, where you have skin exposure. And another one is, what else? Another route of exposure. Anyone? So we can be exposed to chemical via inhalation, via oral exposure and dermal exposure. What else? Another one, the route of exposure. Anyone? It's not eye, because eye we can consider as a dermal exposure. What else? We have 4 different routes to expose a chemical to human body. Anyone else? What is the other route of exposure? The other route of exposure is actually via injection. So if you know that you have been exposed to chemical via injection, so you know that the level, the dose of exposure is 100% will go to the systemic, to a system of your body. So because if you expose via oral or inhalation or dermal, so there are many mechanism happen before the chemical can be circulated in the blood circulation. So for example, if you have 100 ppm, all right, you have been exposed to a benzene at 100 ppm. Okay, you have been exposed via inhalation. Okay, usually benzene is via inhalation. So it will go through many steps before to the lung, and then before it goes to the human body, there are many barriers that perhaps from 100 ppm, finally it goes to blood circulation, perhaps only 10 ppm. So something like this. So you need to know how does your community or your workers been exposed to chemical, because it will define how much the dose in the body. All right. And the duration, if it is acute, usually single high dose, less than 24 hours. If it is subacute and subchronic, usually 1 to 3 months. And if it is chronic exposure, more than 3 months. And the effects varies, okay? Depends on the dose and how long you have been exposed to a chemical. So how we determine the exposure? So you can do if it is a food contaminant, you can do the food frequency questionnaire, or you can also have data from the national level or from the production of the food, or you can do environmental monitoring. You can have the data on bioaccumulation and biomagnification of chemicals, and you can define the exposure based on the route of or the intake or the uptake of chemicals. Next, we go to hazard characterization. Okay, when we talk about hazard characterization, so you need to understand the threshold in toxicology. So we have 2 thresholds, NOEL or LOEL. Okay, this is basic, all right? So NOAEL is the no observed adverse effects level, where when you expose to a chemical in the dose response curve, the data or the points that is no statistical significant difference between the control, then we call that as a NOAEL point, or the threshold of the NOAEL. And the LOEL is actually the lowest observed adverse effect level, where it is the lowest tested dose shows statistically different as compared to control. So this is dose response curve. All right. So basically, when we talk about dose response curve for chemical, they have different type of dose response curve. This is a normal dose response curve, I would say. Many chemicals have this kind of behavior. So basically, when you see this kind of curve, so you know that increasing the dose, increasing the response. All right. So the response can be a toxicity to liver, to brain, or to kidney. Okay. So you need to define the response when they have this kind of curve. This is the lowest point, the lowest dose that you can see the effects. So this is what you define as LOEL. And this is the point where you don't see any statistically different effects as compared to your control. So NOAEL and LOEL, this is a threshold in toxicology. So we can characterize, usually for dose response curve, we will use the animal data to define the dose response curve. Then based on this dose response curve, you can define the NOAEL, LOEL, or there is another threshold we call as benchmark dose. Okay, benchmark dose, lower level of 10%. Okay, when we look at the dose response curve, you can see the shape of the curve and also the slope of the curve. Kecenderungan cerun graph ini, right? It will define also, you can characterize the behavior of chemical based on the shape and the slope of the curve. Of course, the route of administration. And based on this data, because we know that this chemical has been exposed to animal, all right? And animal and human are different, totally. We have different enzyme, we have different character, how we walk is different than animal walk, all right? So we need to extrapolate this data from the NOAEL or LOEL to the acceptable daily intake or tolerable daily intake, or the margin of exposure that we will discuss later. And you need to also understand that one chemical might have more than one effect. Okay, for instance, in this graph, okay, in this graph, you can see that this is a similar chemical, but they have different dose response curve. Okay, for instance, the first graph, A causes neurotoxicity, and the second graph shows the effects of cancer formation, and the third graph is a curve where we can see the death of the animal. Okay, the question now here is, which dose response curve that you can use to protect the public? Either you can use this neurotoxicity or cancer formation or death, or LD50 dose response curve, little dose response curve. So which one, A, B, or C dose response curve that you can use to protect your community or your workers? Anyone would like to try? Anyone? A, B, or C? What do you think? Okay, usually for this kind of graph or this kind of chemical, we will use the most sensitive dose response curve, because if you use, for example, you use the LD50 data and you say that, okay, we can be exposed to a chemical to 1000 ppm. But when you have this exposure to a community or to your workers, your workers or your community already have the neurotoxicity and also you have cancer already. All right, we don't want to do that. So we need to make sure that the dose response curve that we choose in risk assessment is the most sensitive effects or the most sensitive organ or toxic effects. So you need to use this data to be able to protect your community or your workers. So from Noel or Lowell, we can derive the data to develop the acceptable daily intake or tolerable daily intake, where we divide this Noel with safety factors that contribute to the interspecies difference, intraspecies difference, and other uncertainty factors depends on how they carry out the animal testing. So ADI is the chemicals that for the avoidable chemicals, for example, additive and pesticides. For the TDI is for the chemical that is unavoidable chemicals, because there are some chemicals that we can avoid. There are some chemicals that cannot be avoided because it's present in the environment. All right. So TDI can be used to protect the public from, for example, we use the dioxin or mycotoxin or heavy metals from the environment. So Noel or Lowell is the point of departure. Okay, we call it as a point of departure where the acceptable exposure of chemicals, this is the safe level of chemical that can be exposed to human and environment. Then we go to risk characterization, the final step in risk assessment. Okay, first we have hazard identification. Then we characterize the hazard based on the dose response curve. Then we need to evaluate the exposure assessment before we go to risk characterization. So remember from my first earliest slide when we talk about genotoxic and non-genotoxic chemical. So for non-genotoxic chemical, we can use, usually it has the dose response curve look like this. And we can derive this ADI and TDI, but for the and also to characterize the risk, we can use the quotient method. For example, the margin of safety, where you need to divide the ADI with the estimated daily intake, where the margin should be more than 1. But if you have data from Noel, you can use also the margin of safety more than 100. So this is one example on how we can characterize the risk based on the margin of safety method. And there are many other methods also available in the field. And for genotoxic chemicals, all right, so usually for genotoxic chemical, they have different dose response curve. Because in the past, all right, usually this is the data that we found in the literature. Usually we expose to the animal to very high dose to see the effects, all right? But you can imagine that if you have this kind of data, very high dose, it is not realistic to the human exposure, because this experiment is, the goal is to predict the virtual safe dose, the dose that can induce one cancer in 1 million of animal. All right, so you can imagine that if you have this kind of dose response curve, then there are many uncertainty in terms of the extrapolation. So usually the dose response curve for genotoxic is something like this, straight line. So we have also the genotoxic chemical that is avoidable. So usually if we can avoid, so it is zero tolerance. So we cannot use this chemical in workplace or in the environment. But if the chemical is unavoidable, so we have different way on how we can characterize the risk. So for example, we have the margin of exposure approach, where we use all the data from the cancer data, and then we do the modeling, the benchmark dose modeling. This is actually a method that currently being used widely, internationally, especially in Europe and also in the US. So for this margin of exposure, we can use the benchmark dose data divided by estimated daily intake. And if the margin of exposure is more than 10,000, there is low priority to manage the risk. And then we can use this data to, to set priorities with which chemical that we need to, to work on. And it is not a quantitative risk assessment. But remember that there are many other methods available. For instance, you can use the lifetime cancer risk if you have, carcinogenic data. But today I would like to introduce you to another approach, which is we call as a margin of exposure approach for genotoxic carcinogenic chemical. Okay, chemical that cause cancer via genotoxic mode of action. So this is the example, the final part that in my lecture today. So I would like to share on the risk assessment of aristolochic acids in the supplements, herbal food supplements. These acids, or I call short form SAA, is available in the market, especially via internet. Okay, it's a natural genotoxic chemicals from the plant. All right, but in this is a case in Belgium in 1990s, where many young women took a supplement to reduce weight. I think ramai yang take jamu or any herbal supplements to, for example, to reduce weight or to cure any disease, any other disease. All right, but please remember that. And they talk, and usually people will think that because natural, it's safe. But remember that in the case of aristolochic acids, it's not always the case. Natural is not always safe. Okay, I hope that you remember this, because for this case, so this supplement should contain Stephania tetranda, but it was mistakenly exchange with AA, with aristolochic acid, because these two chemicals have a similar Chinese nomenclature, which we call as Fangqi. All right, and this chemical induce kidney cancer in less than 10 years. Okay, this is a very big case, because they found that many young women in less than 10 years have a problem with their urothelial cancer, and some of them have a need to undergo the dialysis due to malfunction of the kidney. And usually for kidney problem, it's a chronic disease, and usually it's not for young women or young people. And these are the data. We saw that there are many supplements was found to contain AA in many parts of the world, especially in this area, Balkan area, because they have planted this chemical. They have the plant, and then there are many cases, not only this area, China, Taiwan, and based on our study also, we found that even though this chemical has been banned, okay, tak boleh jual pun sebenarnya, all right, because we know that it is a class 1 carcinogen. Okay, when we talk about the IERC classification, is a class 1, meaning that confirm if you're exposed to this chemical, it cause cancer in kidney. So especially for instance in Malaysia, even though we don't have we have a ban from the marketing of the selling of this chemical containing AA, but we still found some of our supplements contain this AA, and because you can take it, you can buy it from online. All right, and also my study when I was in the Netherlands, also we found there are many supplements still contain AA. All right, it is a worldwide problem. So how to do risk assessment? The mode of action, the mechanism of action is important. So you need to understand how does this AA1 cause a cancer. So via, for example, in this case, it will interact with DNA and cause a duct formation. And then this duct is hardly being repaired and finally lead to cancer formation. All right. And the strategy, what we did last time, so we sampled many supplements from all over the world, and then we analyze the supplements to see either it is contained AA1 and another metabolite is AA2. All right, with the extraction, we extract the chemicals, the supplements, and we analyze using the ultra performance liquid chromatography. And then at the same time, we estimate the estimated daily intake. So remember the dose assessment process. and then we calculate the margin of exposure for lifetime and also short-term exposure. Then the question here is either we need to manage the risk or not. Then we know that from the animal data that we have, the benchmark dose or the threshold dose for this chemical is 10 microgram AEs per kilogram body weight per day. And then we know the data for the daily intake, then we calculate the margin of exposure. And if you remember from my last slide, the MOE, if it is less than 10,000, meaning that it is a priority to manage the risk. So my final slide. All right, so risk assessment is important in order to judge the safety of chemical. It doesn't matter where you want to use the chemical. Is it in the workplace or is it chemical for the use of a public? And finally, either this chemical will end up in the environment. So this is a process where the 4 steps is important. You need to understand each part before we can judge either this chemical is safe to be used or is there any priority to manage the risk or not. So for the non-genotoxic chemical, you can use a margin of safety method to define the risk, or for the quantitative, for the genotoxic carcinogen, you can use the quantitative risk assessment method. For example, the lifetime cancer risk or margin of exposure to set priorities. All right. So I think that's all on my sharing on toxicology as a basic principle in health risk assessment. I'm not so sure either you can follow my lecture or not, because you have different background. So there are undergraduate students, postgraduate, and also the practitioner in the kesihatan lingkungan. But I hope that there are some points that you can use in my lecture, because toxicology is a basic of everything. All right, you can use this concept in risk assessment, of course, or you have the chemical health risk assessment, CHRA. So you can also, this subject, it's important. All right. Oops. I think I will stop sharing. Any question?
Ya, terima kasih materi yang sudah diberikan oleh Ibu Rozaini ini sangat menarik sekali. Mulai dari dasar toksikologi sudah Ibu berikan, apa itu hazard, apa itu risk, ya perbedaannya, kemudian bagaimana kita bisa mengukur toxicity, kemudian bagaimana untuk mengetahui exposure, seperti itu. Kemudian threshold di toksikologi ada 2 parameter yang bisa dikenali gitu. Nah, kemudian Ibu juga men-share tentang hasil penelitian yang sudah Ibu Rozaini lakukan ya, terkait dengan aristolachic acid ya, atau AAS ini. Kalau boleh tahu, apakah ini suplemen yang diminum untuk, kelihatannya tadi ada ukuran pinggang begitu, untuk slimming begitu ya Ibu? Atau suplemen untuk yang lain?
Ya, dia ada pelbagai fungsi. Alright, so when we talk about natural product, usually people talk about, okay, it will reduce the effects of something. Alright, general health. So banyak function dia, not only to lose weight, but also the other effects, or general health. Jadi daripada hasil penelitian di Belanda, okay, this research has been published. You can just go to my CV and to see the paper, and we found that even though there are many countries has been banned from marketed these supplements, memang tak bisa dijual, tapi masih available di market. Yeah, this is one of the trigger. This is an alarming issue. Alright, so because biasanya jika kita tidak educate, if we don't talk about this to public, people will just take without knowing what they consume. Alright, hanya jadi ambil sahaja apa jamu ataupun apa suplemen untuk kesihatan, menambah baik kesihatan, tapi kita perlu tahu apa yang ada dalam suplemen itu yang menyebabkan kebaikan kepada kesihatan.
Ya, itu terutama apabila dikonsumsi dalam jangka panjang. Saya tadi dengar kurang dari 11 tahun itu juga sudah bisa menimbulkan tumor pada ginjalnya, apa namanya, induced kidney tumors ya.
Betul.
Oke.
Sebenarnya this chemical dia terkategori dalam class 1 carcinogen.
Carcinogenic.
Class 1 carcinogen, dan in less than 10 years there are a lot of adverse effect we can see. Okay, biasanya untuk jika kita faham fundamental concept of the genotoxic carcinogen, okay, the concept is the dose response curve is straight line, all right? Once you expose, you will get cancer at one point of your life, something like that. Okay, very, very
interesting.
Something like that.
Yes, it's very interesting for we know to the effect of the supplement we consume. Oke, untuk para hadirin ya, anak-anak ini semester 5, kebetulan kuliah ada S1 semester 5 yang memang kuliah pada semester ini toksikologi, hanya mungkin baru 5 atau 6 tatap muka kalau tidak salah ini ya, sehingga mereka masih terpanah dengan apa itu toksikologi. Tetapi di sini juga hadir mahasiswa dari Magister Program Environmental Health Magister ya. Saya persilahkan kita masuk ke sesi diskusi. Para mahasiswa ataupun para hadirin yang lainnya yang hadir di sini, silahkan bisa raise your hand, open mic, atau lewat chat ini kami bisa menyampaikan. Kalau lewat chat silahkan. Bisa dalam bahasa Inggris dan juga bisa dalam bahasa Indonesia. Oke, ini ada dari Muhammad Nasir, mahasiswa Magister Kesling. Ya, tahun 2022 ya. Berarti baru semester 1 ini ya, Pak Muhammad Nasir. Ya, ini menyampaikan tentang kemampuan adaptasi dan batas toleransi manusia, misal pekerja, terhadap bahan toksik di lingkungan kerjanya, diduga akan semakin turun secara cepat di tengah akumulasi, konsentrasi, dan kuantitas bahan toksik. Di sini ambient indoor and ambient outdoor. Pertanyaannya, pada kondisi bagaimana regulasi standar batas ambang batas atau threshold limit value bahan toksik di lingkungan kerja harus disegera revisi, harus direvisi atau diperketat agar risiko kesehatan dapat dikendalikan. Jadi sampai batas mana itu limit threshold limit value ya harus diperketat supaya tidak menimbulkan permasalahan kesehatan itu, Ibu. Untuk pertanyaan dari Muhammad Nasir, apakah langsung mau dijawab atau beberapa pertanyaan? Bagaimana?
Langsung dijawab.
Oh ya, silakan Ibu, langsung dijawab.
Sebelum saya menjawab persoalan Muhammad Nasir, perhaps Muhammad Nasir, is it you talk about kesihatan lingkungan, environmental health setting or occupational health setting? So you want to protect the workers, right? Pekerja.
Ya.
Mereka benar begitu, bekerja.
Ya, untuk pekerja. Berarti occupational health ya, Ibu ya.
Okay. So jadi untuk threshold limit ataupun apa nilai ambang bahasa Melayu.
Iya. Threshold limit value.
Okay, threshold
nilai ambang batas.
Yeah. Threshold limits for to protect the environmental health or community is actually different than the limits in workplace setting. Okay, biasanya di tempat kerja kita ada OSHA or OSH, we call that, for instance, the short-term exposure limits. Okay, the limit yang ada di yang telah ditetapkan di tempat kerja is actually different than ambient limits. Kenapa berlakunya sebegini? Kerana what we want to protect in the workplace, usually pekerja kita dalam akta merupakan orang dewasa yang sihat tubuh badannya. Tapi jika kita compare dengan limit untuk community or public health, it's different sebab dia punya how to say that, the level of protection is actually from babies, from vulnerable people, sampai orang dewasa sampai orang tua. Jadi jika kita nak tahu bagaimana condition, bagaimana regulasi standard, maksudnya bagaimana ya? Jika for example in the workplace you have measured the level of contaminants, okay, indoor outdoor, okay, you have the level, okay, you have benzene level indoor and outdoor, and then you need to compare the level with the standard. Is it within the standard or is it lebih rendah daripada standard ataupun lebih tinggi daripada standard yang dibenarkan, piawaian yang dibenarkan? Seperti contoh, okay, indoor benzene example ya, this is not a correct, or chemical X, I will use chemical X. The standard for chemical X to be exposed in the workplace, indoor workplace, is 10 ppm. But you measure the level in your workplace is 100 ppm. So you know that this is one of the key. You know that you have your workers have been exposed to chemical X 10 times higher than the standard. So you need to do the you need to do the protection or the next action to manage the risk. All right, so you measure the level. Okay, kamu measure the level compare with the standard, because the standard is actually the nilai yang akan protect your workers from the adverse health effects. Saya harap saya menjawab, Muhammad Nasir. Boleh?
Ya. Silahkan Muhammad Nasir, apakah sudah terjawab jawabannya dari Ibu Rozaini atas pertanyaan Muhammad Nasir? Ya, saya rasa sudah ya. Jadi kita bisa tahu bahwa ada perbedaan untuk pengukuran atau ambang batas di tempat kerja maupun di lingkungan ya Ibu ya.
Iya betul.
Iya.
Tapi dia mungkin kalau kita if we are the regulator, okay, jika kita adalah apa ya?
Ada aturan.
Yang mengatur, yang kita lah yang menetapkan the standard limit. Okay, kalau anda bekerja sebagai regulator, okay, which standard that you can use to protect your workers? Because usually data yang kita ada tu data daripada luar negara, okay, dari United States, daripada Europe, yang levelnya the environment is different in our country. So these are the things for regulators to think deeply. What is the level nilai piawaian yang you can use to protect your workers in your specific countries? Alright, so untuk yang regulator, it's different story. But for us as a safety and health officer ataupun as a environmental health officer, so usually what we can do, our approach is you measure and then you compare with the standard.
Okay, yeah. Jadi tergantung pada negara masing-masing, karena kalau mengikuti standar negara maju itu sangat berbeda dan mereka sangat ketat sekali ya Ibu ya. Oke, berikutnya pertanyaan dari Saudari Fitri Amelia Mekawati. Di sini ditanyakan contoh suplemen yang bisa menyebabkan toksik pada pemakainya. Itu mungkin apa saja begitu ya, karena sekarang banyak anak muda yang sudah memakai suplemen untuk kecantikan kulit. Oh ya, skincare ini Ibu ya, kosmetik, skincare mungkin brightening, whitening begitu Ibu ya. Sekarang kan mereka pingin glowing. Nah itu silahkan Ibu.
Terima kasih Ibu ya. Terima kasih Fitri Amelia. Okay, berkenaan dengan suplemen kecantikan. You have learned toxicology, so the basic is the dose make it poison. Okay, kita berbalik kepada fundamental concept of toxicology, the dose make it poison. Jadi untuk suplemen yang menyebabkan toksik pemakaiannya, biasanya untuk skincare product, what we need to really see, for example, the presence of heavy metal in the product.
Mercury.
Mercury. Sebab kenapa orang guna mercury? Kenapa? Sebab untuk dapatkan glowing effects, the rosy cheeks supaya nampak, pink pada pipinya. Dan people put these chemicals dalam dalam produk untuk menambah cantik. Alright. Jadi perlu tahu sebagai pengguna, the most important thing is we need to educate on how to read. We need to read the ingredients. Perlu baca apa kandungan bahan yang kita akan gunakan kepada kita punya skincare ataupun apa yang kita makan. Kena baca. Dan bila baca kita tahu, oh dia ada daripada pokok ini contohnya. Oh dia mengandungi chemical hyaluronic acid at which level, for instance. Alright. So remember that we go back to fundamental concept of toxicology, the dose make it poison. Okay, one chemical might cause toxic effects, but the same chemical can also be a cure to a disease. Okay, we need to know the level so that we know that dekat mana nilai yang kita boleh guna kita boleh ambil dalam kehidupan kita.
Ya. Jadi kalau sedikit bisa jadi obat, tapi kalau banyak bisa meracuni ya. Jadi harus mengetahui dosnya, level dosnya, kemudian juga komposisi ya dari skincare yang kita gunakan. Beberapa waktu yang lalu mahasiswa kami juga melakukan penelitian terkait dengan penggunaan lipstick ya. Jadi ingin tahu dari mahasiswa-mahasiswa di FKM pada tahun itu, mereka menggunakan lipstick dengan merek apa saja, kemudian diperiksa di laboratorium dan sekitar 30% dari sampel lipstick yang digunakan itu dari berbagai merek itu ternyata memang ada kandungan merkurinya. Begitu. Nah, itu sehingga menyebabkan bibir menjadi kalau muka menjadi hitam gitu ya, jadi lama-lama kalau pakai merkuri yang awalnya jadi pinky kemudian lama-lama hitam begitu. Nah, kalau bibir sama seperti itu ya, lama-lama juga menghitam. Dan ternyata ada 30% dari sekian sampel yang diperiksa itu mengandung merkuri. Itu yang sampelnya dari mahasiswa yang di FKM pada tahun berapa saya lupa. Ya, itu. Jadi memang banyak kita harus hati-hati penggunaan skincare ya, kosmetik, lipstick, produk brightening, whitening dan lain sebagainya. Apalagi kalau dosisnya sangat tinggi ya, begitu dipakai langsung glowing, begitu cantik ya, ya glowing. Kemudian beberapa waktu kemudian tidak bisa glowing lagi karena sudah mulai hitam-hitam muncul ya. Ya, ini masih ada lagi pertanyaan dari Novita to everyone ya. Beside the carcinogenic effect, are there any other effects such as infertility when we take supplement containing EA compounds? Yeah.
Thank you, Novita. So when we talk about EE, we don't talk about infertility for EE. All right, but there are other chemicals that can cause infertility that come from natural, but not AE. But usually when we talk about AE, it's remember that the most sensitive or the target organ toxicity, okay, very specific because this AA will target to urothelium or to kidney, because in kidney they have specific protein that can bind AA and goes directly to the kidney. Alright, dia tak akan pergi ke mana tempat lain. Okay, so kalau if we understand bagaimana kalau kita makan, okay, kita makan suplemen atau kita makan makanan, it will goes to our intestine, alright, and then it will go to the liver, and then that it will circulate to the whole body before it can be excreted. Okay, itu adalah how the chemical will travel in our body. Alright, so the question here is, kenapa AA tak ada kesan pada liver? Mungkin ada kesan tapi sangat sedikit jika kita compare pada kidney, pada ginjal. Alright, kerana sebab chemical ni memang suka sangat pergi ke kidney sebab dia ada specific protein yang menyebabkan dia akan deposit in the kidney. So that's the basic things when we talk about the organ or target organ toxicity. All right. But for AA, it's more on kidney, but there are other chemicals that will cause the infertility. But I cannot remember the specific name, but of course, there are many chemicals that can cause infertile. Okay, berbalik kepada soalan sebelum ni, bila Ibu berkata berkenaan glowing effects, okay, another chemicals that is important for us to take note is actually the hydroquinone.
Yeah.
And also one part of benzene, okay? Benzene, and then it will metabolize to hydroquinone, and it will metabolize to another quinone metabolite. Okay, this hydroquinone memang akan menyebabkan skin brightening, akan cantik. Bila orang pakai je, okay, dalam masa seminggu, you will get this kind of glowing effects. But in the long run, this chemical cause cancer, especially in blood cancer. So please be careful, because I believe that semua yang ada dalam program sekarang adalah scholar. We are all scholar, kita belajar menuntut ilmu, dan ilmu yang kita ada ni kita perlu sampaikan kepada ahli keluarga yang lain. Okay, please be careful when we talk about the traditional medicine untuk kecantikan. Of course we can do that, but in a moderate way. Okay, perlu berhati-hati, nak ambil boleh tapi jangan terlalu tinggi dosnya.
Yeah. Ya, betul sekali Ibu. Karena memang sekarang ini sedang viral ya, terkait dengan penggunaan hydroquinone, kemudian juga efeknya yang sangat cepat, ternyata bisa menyebabkan blood cancer ya, kanker darah ya Bu ya. Jadi sangat membahayakan ya. Ini penggunanya memang remaja-remaja para mahasiswa yang ya biasa kan senang bertambah cantik gitu ya Bu ya.
Dan untuk produk yang memang kecantikan itu memang mudah untuk viral.
Iya, sangat cepat sekali untuk viral, karena apa saja yang digunakan oleh selebriti atau influencer yang kemudian menganjurkan penggunaan A, B, C, D dan sebagainya begitu. Oke, iya. Ya, mungkin ada lagi yang mau ditanyakan para hadirin yang ada di sini? Iya.
Ada lagi persoalan?
Ada lagi nih, ada isu ya. Merek mie sedap asal Indonesia ditemukan mengandung pestisida jenis etilen oleh Center for Food Safety Hong Kong. Bagaimana menyikapi ini Ibu? Ya, kami di Indonesia ada mie instan, mereknya dari mie sedap ya. Dan kemarin diberitakan itu ditemukan ada kandungan bahan berbahaya di dalam mie instan tersebut ya. Silahkan Ibu.
Menyikapi itu apa ya dalam bahasa Inggris?
Menyikapi itu.
How to respond.
How to respond.
Yeah.
Alright. Jadi di mie sedap ini ada pesticide jenis ethylene. Ya. Alright. Bagaimana untuk respons? Okay, jadi mie sedap ini asal Indonesia dan
asal Indonesia.
Dan dijual di Hong Kong. Is it like that?
Ya, diekspor ke berbagai negara.
Okay. Okay, tapi di Hong Kong sudah di-ban ke?
Ya, sekarang sudah di-ban setelah ditemukan ada bahan berbahaya tersebut. Kemudian diikuti oleh beberapa negara lainnya setelah di Hong Kong ditemukan bahan berbahaya tersebut.
Jadi itulah sebenarnya cara respons untuk soalan ini. Kerana jadi di Indonesia juga perlu mengkajilah, ya, you need to measure the level of this kind of pesticide in mie sedap, okay, to make sure that it doesn't contain this kind of pesticide. And I believe pesticide ini tak boleh ada dalam mie sedap.
Dalam makanan, iya, dalam semua makanan juga ya.
Tapi untuk pesticide, there are certain we call that as a standard it can contain certain type of pesticide, but because pesticide dia banyak range jadi untuk kira risiko tu ada banyak cara, but I'm not so sure about ethylene. Is it avoidable or is it unavoidable chemicals? Okay, tapi jika mereka temui dan memang tak boleh berada dalam makanan, maksudnya memang perlu tak boleh lah, maksudnya perlu dihaji. Betul kan?
Quality control diperlukan ya sebelum bahan itu dikonsumsi atau dipasarkan begitu ya Ibu ya. Ya. Kemudian kita lanjut ke pertanyaan berikut dari Atik Rizkiana. Apakah produk minuman bersuplemen juga mengandung bahan-bahan toksik dengan melihat fenomena saat ini banyak anak-anak di usia muda yang telah mengalami hemodialisis atau cuci darah? Berapakah batas kemampuan tubuh manusia dalam mentoleransi efek toksik dalam minuman suplemen? Ya, di Indonesia itu ada beberapa jenis minuman suplemen. Jadi minuman baik itu di di kemasan kaleng ataupun botol begitu, yang digunakan untuk memberikan efek segar pada tubuh, kemudian juga kalau lelah
penat,
biasanya ya penat, payah gitu, itu kemudian minum suplemen itu jadi segar lagi, begitu pula juga untuk menahan kantuk dan lain sebagainya. Nah, dalam suplemen ini apakah ada bahan toksik yang diberikan karena ada banyak anak muda yang sering mengkonsumsi minuman suplemen tersebut kemudian mengalami gagal ginjal ya, sehingga dilakukan pencuci darah. Karena ada pengalaman sopir di fakultas kami di FKM itu, beliau waktu itu sering mengkonsumsi minuman bersuplemen, minuman energi ini karena perjalanan luar kota begitu dan seterusnya. Kemudian saat usia pensiun dan dia malah mengalami masalah gagal ginjal ini. Itu juga ada kasus yang ada di fakultas kita. Silahkan Ibu, bagaimana ini?
Iya, terima kasih soalan Atik Rizkiani. Okay, the same concept, right? The basic principle, the same concept with other produk kesihatan yang lain. Macam tadi contohnya adalah natural ubatan tradisional. Sama juga konsep dia dengan minuman bertenaga atau bersuplemen. Apa yang kita boleh buat adalah what we need to take care is actually to know what is actually the content, apa yang ada dalam minuman itu yang menyebabkan dia bertenaga. Okay, contoh, misalnya minuman itu mengandungi ekstrak daripada tumbuhan jenis apa. Okay, so tapi itulah bila kita tahu dari pokok apa, dari mana dia datang, berapa level dia yang menyebabkan kesan itu, itu yang paling penting sebenarnya. Dan itu adalah masalah global. It's not only problem in Indonesia or in Malaysia or Southeast Asia region. It is a global issue when we talk about natural product, because it is so difficult to regulate, because it is not covered under drug, because it's covered under supplement, which is it's difficult to regulate. Okay, tapi apa yang kita boleh buat adalah kita kena tahu apa yang kita minum. Okay, macam contoh supir di FKM, dia minum supplements untuk bagi tenaga. Okay, adakah pokok yang kita kena tahu apa yang ada dalam suplemen tu and what is actually the level. Dan setiap satu botol air tu, I don't think that they have measured how much the level of certain plant. Ataupun itulah masalah yang paling besar untuk regulate this kind of product. Okay, memang kita struggle juga, di Malaysia juga struggle, di Europe juga struggle when we deal with this natural or supplement or minuman tambahan or minuman bertenaga. Alright, jika soalannya berapakah aras batas kemampuan tubuh untuk tolerate, okay, this is also back to fundamental concept of toxicology, the dose make it poison, and also the ADME concept, administration, okay, masuknya, macam mana dia masuk, the distribution of the chemicals to the body, the metabolism, either this chemical can be metabolized to another metabolites that will reduce the effects, toxic effects, and finally, how much is being excreted from the body. If you know that, for instance, you have 100% masuk, and then 100% keluar daripada badan, that's fine. Tapi kalau the chemicals being stored in the body for a long period of time and cannot be metabolized, cannot be excreted from the body, that's the what you call that, the red light or the alarm things that you need to think. Either is it bolehkah minum, ataupun kalau boleh minum, berapa banyak yang boleh minum? Okay, sebabnya bahaya. The concept here is dangerous. Okay, because we don't know what we consume, what we eat. Saya harap saya menjawab soalan Atik.
Iya, sudah menjawab sekali ini Ibu ya. Ini sangat menarik sekali diskusinya karena banyak yang tertarik terkait dengan suplemen, skincare, kemudian juga permasalahan di lingkungan kerja dan lingkungan sekitar kita. Apakah ini diteruskan atau kayaknya sudah ini ya, sudah tidak ada pertanyaan lagi ya?
Ada satu
Masih
lagi.
ada.
Oh, ada satu lagi ya. Dari Indah Emaras ya. Ya, Indah Emaras bertanya, pestisida merupakan bahan toksik. Lalu bagaimana cara pemerintah Malaysia menangani dan melindungi petani hortikultura agar tidak terkontaminasi pestisida, insektisida, dan lain-lain? Terima kasih. Ya.
Okay, terima kasih Indah. Okay, when we talk about pesticide, okay, biasanya kesannya pada petani lah. Okay, how we regulate? Of course, kita perlu tahu pesticide apa yang dibenarkan di Malaysia, okay, pesticide apa yang boleh digunakan, dan how we protect our community, bagaimana kita protect kita punya rakyat adalah di peringkat kerajaan, di peringkat Kementerian Kesihatan, they have a monitoring system, okay, to know the level of pesticide in the crops. Okay, kita ada rutin, okay, contohnya ada rutin lah, maksudnya 1 tahun tu berapa banyak samples yang diambil to make sure that the pesticide residue is between the safe level. Alright, okay, that's to protect the public. But how to protect the petani? Okay, alright, kalau petani kita akan pastikan the problem with pesticide is actually petani ya. Okay, petani betul. Okay, petani dia lebih expert in term of mixing the pesticide. Okay, dia campur-campur jadi.
Betul.
Kalau kita kata, okay, guna yang A sahaja, okay, boleh cure ataupun boleh bunuh rumpai contohnya. Petani dia bijak, dia lebih sebab dia berpengalaman. Okay, dia campur A, B, C. Okay, dia kata, okay, ini boleh bertahan selama 3 bulan contoh. Okay. So what we did untuk protect petani, first to make sure that they don't mix sesuka hati, alright, and then the level of the chemical that they use also being monitored. We need to monitor also because kita tak tahu berapa banyak. When we talk about pesticide, sebenarnya yang akan pergi ke tumbuhan ataupun crops, very low amount. Okay, contohnya kita spray 100%, hanya 1% sahaja yang akan pergi ke tumbuhan. Tetapi lagi 99% of pesticide will go to the environment. And it will contaminate the water, it will contaminate the soil. That's a problem with pesticide. Alright. So untuk biasanya untuk petani kita akan make sure that dia protect themselves macam cara penyemburan, pakai correct PPE, macam itulah lebih kurang. Okay. Dan ada banyak cara lain, make sure that the chemicals or pesticide that they use is a safe chemical. That's the most important thing. And we have many research when we talk about petani and pesticide, where we measure the level of the level of pesticide in the body of the petani and also the surrounding area. Itu nak tahu adakah ada kesan ke tidak on the pesticide that have been used by the petani.
Ya. Kalau di kita mungkin di Indonesia juga Minister of Agriculture itu juga sudah punya aturan terkait dengan penyemprotan pestisida itu 2 minggu sebelum panen harus dihentikan, begitu ya.
Ya, ya,
Nah, itu
benar.
juga ada aturannya. Jadi
Ya, ada
memang
aturannya. Sama. I
ya,
think it's the same. Should be the same in Malaysia too.
ya,
Sebelum berapa minggu sebelum buah, something like that. Ya.
ya, yes. Ya, jadi selain tadi aturan juga kemudian dosis memang petani kadang-kadang karena keadaan di lokasi pertanian sehingga mereka kemudian mencampur-campur. Itu juga sering kita temui di
Ya.
pertanian agriculture maupun ya di daerah Brebes. Kalau di Jawa Tengah itu terkenal sekali dengan pertanian berambang bawang merah, onion ya. Itu kemudian mereka seringkali mencampur-campur dan dosisnya akhirnya tidak terkendali.
Itu yang
Tidak
bahaya.
bisa dihitung. Iya, ya
Itu
sangat
yang
berbahaya
bahaya.
sekali.
Because
Ya,
we know the mixture effects is different. Because in
yes.
toxicology, kita hanya cerita, we talk about the effects of one chemical. Okay,
Yes.
but the
Yeah.
mixture effect of chemical is another different story. Okay,
Yeah.
sangat bahaya bila campur-campur tak tahu lah sekali jadi apa.
Betul, bisa kemana-mana jadinya ya, budidaya yang satu efeknya ke darah, yang satu efeknya kemana dan seterusnya, selain semuanya di lingkungan. Ya, ini menarik sekali diskusinya sampai waktunya sudah lebih-lebih. Mohon maaf Ibu karena mahasiswa juga sangat tertarik dengan topik bahasan yang diberikan pada hari ini. Saya mengucapkan banyak terima kasih pada Ibu
Mau bertanya
Rozaini.
bisa?
Oh, boleh Ibu Yusniar. Silahkan Ibu.
Okay, thank you. I ever heard or read some articles that said that the disrupting effect of endocrine system work below the NOEL or below the safest standard. Is it true?
Yeah. That's true. That's very true. So because usually when we talk about endocrine disrupting chemical or EDC, it's totally different story. Okay, and it works, yes, beyond lower than the NOEL because it's so difficult to see the effects of this endocrine disruption in a specific cell, for example. All right, when we talk about endocrine disrupting chemical in the environment, for example, when we talk about the pill to control birth, to control pregnancy, all right, contraceptive. Okay, untuk perempuan makan contraceptive pill, of course it will affect the hormone system of the body, and then finally it's being excreted to an environment, and these pills are being exposed in an environment in the water, for example, and then finally we end up drinking the water because this chemical cannot be filtered during the process of quality of the water. All right, and finally it's end up to everyone. All right, and the level it's difficult to say, yeah, because even though when we talk about hormone system, the endocrine system, once you expose to a very low concentration, it's already have the effects. Yeah, but for that statement, I think that's true. So that's another challenge in toxicology, also to define the safe level of the endocrine disrupting chemicals.
So the basic principle of toxicology, the dose makes poison, is in this case still works. The dose makes the poison. Yeah,
the dose, which dose or for the endocrine disrupting chemical cause the effects to the to the environment, to human. It's still the dose, how much, but the threshold dose is different story. So what is the threshold for endocrine disruptors? It's difficult to define, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ibu Yusniar. Okay, but I hope that has sparked some, curiosity, and also some. There are some points that the take-home message, at least the students and also the audience can take from my lecture. So before I end or give back the floor to Ibu Sulistiani and also Miss Lina. So in this lecture or in this session. I'm very thankful. I'm very honored to be invited to share my knowledge. I'm not really an expert yet. I'm still, new in the field. I still don't know many things. That's for sure. But with the, the place and also the time that has been given and the opportunity that was given to me, I'm very honored and I'm very thankful for everyone for listening to my lecture on toxicology as a basic principle and health risk assessment. I hope that you will benefit from the lecture that was given by me, and semua yang baik itu datang daripada Allah dan yang buruk, yang salah itu datangnya daripada saya sendiri. And thank you so much everyone, and I hope that we can do something together in the near future, especially in terms of research and also about teaching and educate the nation. Thank you so much. Ibu perlu unmute.
Bu Sulis masih mute.
Ya, terima kasih banyak Ibu Rozaini yang telah men-sharing materi tentang toksikologi dan beberapa suplemen yang berbahaya buat kesehatan kita, kemudian diskusi yang sangat menarik ini. Tentunya kami berharap agar kerjasama ini terus berlangsung, yang membuat kita juga makin berkembang, ya. Dan saya juga mohon maaf kalau dalam memandu visiting lecturer ini ada kekurangan dan kesalahan. Terima kasih banyak. Waktu dan layar saya kembalikan kepada MC. Dek Lina, silahkan. Terima kasih, Ibu.
Baik, Bu Sulis. Baik, terima kasih banyak kepada Ibu Rozaini binti Abdullah, PhD, selaku narasumber kita, dan Ibu Dr. Randa Sulistiani, MKes, selaku selaku moderator pada pagi hari ini. Sungguh luar biasa pengalaman dan pengetahuan yang dibagikan, dan sekali lagi kami mohon izin untuk mengingatkan Bapak, Ibu, dan peserta sekalian untuk dapat mengisi daftar hadir yang sudah dibagikan di kolom chat. Daftar hadir ini sebagai dasar untuk menerbitkan sertifikat. Untuk panitia yang bertugas, mohon untuk memberikan link daftar hadir di kolom chat. Baik, dengan demikian telah kita lalui bersama serangkaian kegiatan seminar pendidikan kesehatan lingkungan pada pagi hari ini. Kami, atas nama panitia, mohon maaf jika dalam penyelenggaraan kegiatan ada kekurangan ataupun kesalahan. Dan tak lupa kami ucapkan sekali lagi terima kasih kepada Ibu Rozaini binti Abdullah, PhD, selaku narasumber dan seluruh peserta kegiatan yang hadir pada kegiatan hari ini. Akhir kata, kita tutup dengan bacaan hamdalah bersama-sama. Alhamdulillahirrahmanirrahim. Semoga kegiatan pada pagi hari ini dapat bermanfaat bagi kita semua. Sampai berjumpa di lain kesempatan. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, Bapak, Ibu, dan peserta lainnya.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih, Bu Rozaini, semuanya, Lina,
See you next time.
panitia lainnya.
Hope we can meet
Salam sehat
again.
buat semua.
Amin.
Inshallah, we can meet again in the future.
Yeah.
Yes, I hope.
Hopefully we can invite you offline to Indonesia.
Okay.
Ya, insyaAllah, insyaAllah.
Insya
Terima
Allah.
kasih tahniah buat semua ya.
Ya,
Organization,
kasih.
Lina, and also others. Okay, thank you so much. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you.
Sekali lagi izin mengingatkan untuk mengisi daftar hadir, nggih, sudah dikirim di kolom chat.
Terima kasih ya Mbak Lina dan semuanya, Bu Niki, Bu Suli, semuanya terima kasih.
Bu Yus.
Izin live ya.
Ibu.
In 1985, for the first time, we accepted new students from diploma to bachelor degree under the name of the Public Health Study Program, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Diponegoro. In 1987, the Public Health Study Program began admitting students for the regular program for the first time. In 1993, the Public Health Study Program changed to the Faculty of Public Health based on the decree of the Minister of Education and Culture of the Republic of Indonesia, number 0369/0/1993, dated 21st November 1993. Faculty of Public Health Vision. In the year of 2024, Faculty of Public Health becomes an excellent higher education institution in the field of public health in the international level. Faculty of Public Health are concerned in achieving the following objectives: to obtain graduates who have the spirit of Pancasila, competent, have social awareness, and have the Undip's graduate profile that are complete and miracle. Complete: communicator, professional, leader, entrepreneur, thinker, educator. And miracle: manager, innovator, researcher, apprentice, communitarian, leader, and educator. To obtain innovative research and beneficial products to solve public health problems and to achieve world-class university. To obtain publications in reputable national and international journals, attainments in intellectual property rights that beneficial to the development of public health to support world-class university. To contribute in the public health problems solving in regional, national, and international level. To organize transparent and accountable public health higher education in accordance with applicable regulation supported by technology advances. To organize cooperation and partnership in education, research, publication, product innovation, and community services in public health aspects with public and private institutions in national and international level. The organizational structure in Faculty of Public Health. Faculty leaders: the Dean, the Vice Dean for Academic and Student Affairs, the Vice Dean for Resources. The study programs in Faculty of Public Health are Bachelor in Public Health, accredited as Excellent, Master in Public Health, accredited as Excellent, Master in Environmental Health, accredited as Excellent, Master in Health Promotion, accredited as Excellent, Doctor in Public Health, accredited as Excellent. The implementation of the education program in the Faculty of Public Health is supported by lecturers from reputable universities. Currently, the faculty has 34 lecturers with doctoral degrees of 66 lecturers with various scientific fields. They are Health Policy and Administration, Public Health Nutrition, Epidemiology and Tropical Diseases, Occupational Safety and Health, Environmental Health, Biostatistic and Population, and Health Promotion and Behavioral Sciences. In the learning process, the Faculty of Public Health is supported by education staff from various backgrounds, competencies, and professionalism. The buildings in Faculty of Public Health are Building A, the Dean built with 2 stories. Building B, classrooms with 3 stories. Building C, lecturers' room with 2 stories and meeting rooms. Building D, secretariat room of graduate study programs, classrooms for graduate programs, computer laboratory. Public Health Laboratory, Unit Room of Faculty Supports, and Hall. Building E, Students Activities Room. Building F, Student Activity Center, Praying Room, and Canteen. Building G, Secretariat Room of Undergraduate Study Programs, Library, Archive Rooms, and Student Activities Rooms, and also other facilities such as canteen, futsal field, basketball field, volleyball field, and other sport facilities. To support student learning process, the Faculty of Public Health has 6 laboratories: Basic Biomedicine Laboratory, Environmental Health Laboratory, Occupational Safety and Health Laboratory, Epidemiology and Entomology Laboratory, Public Health Nutrition Laboratory, and Audio-Visual Aids Laboratory. The Faculty of Public Health has accepted international students since 2016 for degree and non-degree programs in order to support Universitas Diponegoro to be the world-class university. The non-degree programs, such as summer course program, internship program, joint research, and community services, are followed by students from many countries such as Taiwan, Netherlands, Australia, Germany, China, Pakistan, Sudan, Libya, USA, Malaysia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Nigeria, and many more. Other international programs to support world-class university are visiting professors from overseas universities, International Conference on Public Health for Tropical and Coastal Development, staff exchange, lecture joint research between universities and with international NGOs. Student activities, internship, partnership with villages related to maternal health, field study practices, outbound, community services, student units activities, Research Center of Faculty of Public Health, Research Center of Environment and Toxic Material, Research Center of Neglected Tropical Diseases, Research Center of Reproductive Health and HIV/AIDS, Research Center of Public Health Nutrition, Research Center of Health Policy.